the next goal is to go to Tunisia. We've been trying to get to Tunisia since we left Thessaloniki ages ago, but now we're almost there. We're basically on the last leg, but the sail straight is about 200 miles. With just two of us, I think it makes sense to break that up into two sails. It is really difficult at night to tell sometimes what is a ship that is moving and one that is not moving, because we're moving, and so the perspective of all of the lights is always changing. As we're going north, we come across a tanker anchor field. The anchorage field is not even on the map, and so it's a surprise to us. So then I'm gonna reckon that all these other ones are on anchor as well. We're sailing close haul to Linosa. We're pointing as much into the wind as we possibly can. It's not particularly comfortable, but we make decent time, and we end up a few miles south of Linosa. So we have to turn on the engine and motor straight into the wind. We could tack up through it, but if we do that, we're gonna get there after dark. We need to get there before dark because we're coming into a small harbor that we have never been to before. Like it? And these fishermen tell us you should dock here, Medmore, drop the anchor, come back, and we'll help you with the dock lines. It's like, okay, that's very much appreciated. It's not exactly where I wanted to Medmore, but because they're the locals, I'm like, okay, they probably know what's up. I'm not familiar with this. I just know that there are some shallow areas, but I don't know where. Linosa is a tiny little island. It is only 1.5 nautical miles in diameter in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It is a authentic Italian island, but we're there at the pretty much lowest part of the low season, but there's still like 50 to 70 people living on this island. 20 hours and 22 minutes, 4.5 knot average speed. Jacob, we have made it to Linosa. Woo! We're back in Italy. Well, you've never been in Italy. Welcome to Italy. You've sailed to both Malta and Italy now. This spot here is where I was originally planning on docking yesterday, but over there was where the fishermen were. The reason I was planning on docking here is because as the wind is today, it's kind of south-southwest. So over there's a nice little swell coming in, which the swell coming in is the reason that we have moved over here. The issue is out there, it's really shallow and there's boulders, and we ran aground and it was awful. It took maybe 5 minutes to get off. Had to go forward and back, and it was just like awful. I will dive on the boat, check the damage. Most likely in Tunisia, we'll be hauling out and fixing whatever I just did to the keel. I don't know that I necessarily would have changed docking initially, because the way the wind was blowing, it would have been more difficult to dock in the initial planned spot. But earlier that day, when it was calm and I was like, well, should we move the boat? That's kind of a pain in the butt. We should have moved the boat and we would not have had a problem. Sometimes there are windows in which things need to be done, and if you hesitate, then you cause damage. Within like 10 minutes of docking, a man comes up and he gives us a tuna fish that he literally had just caught.
Enzo the King. Okay. Your name? Capitan Enzo. Enzo. Benedetto Enzo. All right.
He just welcomes himself onto the boat while smoking a cigarette, speaks no English, and it starts like chopping up the fish.
Spada. Spada. 2 mesi.
Yeah.
2 meters?
2 months.
Sì.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 months.
Woo! Sciommo. Io mangio.
But I'll drink to it. Woo! And so?
Oh!
It was a nice welcome experience to the island, and it was delicious. It was really good. In a couple days, there's a big storm coming, predicting like 40 knots plus, 45 knot gusts, maybe even more. So we need to prepare for that with some bow lines. So we gotta go swimming no matter what. I go and I find the anchor, and the anchor is like in all sorts of rocks, and the chain is all wrapped around rocks, and it's like we would not be able to get that anchor back from Arianrhod. She'd get running around again. I get the anchor, I get it back to the boat, and I start setting up mooring lines. There's these big concrete blocks that have been dropped in this harbor throughout the years, and then the lines have been cut and nobody uses them anymore. And so there's ample rope laying around at the bottom of the harbor that I could go dive, pick up, cut to the size that I wanted, and then anchor them to giant concrete blocks and tie them to the boat. We ended up having 4 mooring lines tied off to the bow. The wind picked up the next day, and it was intense. We were really getting blown around. I think it blew for 3 days. We didn't have to stay on the boat the whole time that the wind was blowing crazy. We were still able to go out and hike around knowing that the boat was safe and secure, that, you know, it was not going anywhere. We only intended to stay on Linosa initially for a couple days, but because of the way the weather turned out, we were there for a little bit over a week. So we had the opportunity to explore a lot more deeply than we would have had we only had 3 days. I think a lot of people feel like you need to visit many different places in order to explore, when in reality, a lot of people haven't even explored their own backyard. They haven't even explored their own country and their own homeland. They see people on the internet that have been to every country in the world and whatnot, but it's like, well, what does that even mean? Is it just standing on the land that equals visiting a country, or is it actually feeling what that culture is like and understanding a bit of the geography and seeing the place and feeling like you've actually been in a place? It's one of the things I really like about traveling on a boat, is that I get an actual chance to live in that place and feel what that's like. Being there long enough to slow down and see some of the minutia that is in the area. You can just walk through the woods and all you see is trees, but if you stop for about 30 seconds, a minute, and just look around, you've got this whole ecosystem and community of ants and bugs and birds and everything like that. But if you're moving too quickly, you just zoom past that and don't even see it. Our last night in Linosa, they had a party at the wine bar, and they invited us, and they just cooked up this big meal, and it was, you know, come eat, drink, and you just pay for your drinks at the bar. The food's free. You know, they weren't expecting any tourists. They had live music, like just a few people were, you know, playing guitar and singing. One guy had a cajon, and so then we just jammed for like an hour. It was really, really good to have that island hospitality. The best hospitality I've come across so far have been island people.
Grazie Ernesto. Ciao.
Ernesto waving us press on, then turn quickly.
It was good enough for us to be able to sail to Tunisia. It wasn't great. It was still, we were going to be close hauling, intense sailing. Jacob really enjoyed it. We had big waves to start with, like 3-meter waves, 9-foot waves to start with. I'm down below, it's nighttime, and I'm laying in my berth, and I'd hear a horrific sound. It sounded like somebody took an aluminum baseball bat and just did a full baseball swing into the mast. We just broke the forestay. In the middle of the night, I was able to get the whole sail in, and then we turned on the engine. Didn't have any damage to the mast, luckily, because we have 2 forestays. Had we only had 1 forestay, we could have run into the issue of the mast snapping in half, basically, or doing a lot of damage to the boat. And I mean, all things considered, the forestay broke on the way to Tunisia, or the whole plan is to repair anything that's broken on the boat, rather than it breaking when we leave Tunisia. That would have been a real bummer. Calling Yasmin Hamama. This is sailing vessel Arianrhod. We have a reservation, and I'm just wondering if there will be a small tender to come help us into our slip. Arrive in Tunisia, go through the customs and all of that, and Jacob then, in the next day, hops on a plane and heads to Kenya.
It's from full moon to full moon, so full moon cycle, however long that is.
If you had to describe your experience in one word.
One word? Exciting. That's a pretty boring word, but that's the first word that came to mind, and it does explain it quite well. So.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, dude, no problem.
Love you, brother.
Love you too.
I really appreciate all that he went through with the seasickness and the sailing and just all the intense situation of crossing seas. It's much appreciated. Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate that a lot.
Bye, Jacob. Safe travels. Enjoy Kenya.
I will. I'll send you a postcard, or more likely like an email, but, same thing.
Cool.